Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pariprajapacharya Stotra Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kunigiri Gurtan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Kangamai Ki Jai Jamanamai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Maharaj. Welcome, everyone, to Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. Today is March 31st, 2023, and a day later in Dubai you're in?
Yes.
Okay, Thank you. As always, we're eager to hear everyone's comments and questions, so please use the raise hand feature or simply unmute yourself and speak when Maharaj asks for questions, or you can type your comments into the chat window. We ask that you don't send any chat messages if Maharaj is reading something there, because it makes it difficult to read. At the end of class, I'll post some links that you can share with your friends so that they can attend as well. And we're glad that you could join us all the way from Dubai, Maharaj. And I'm sorry I said we started Kirtan without you. I meant to say in anticipation of you. Hare Krishna.
Whatever. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Teva Amusha Varina Sita Padma Kosham. Udviksha Sundaratara Dharakundahasam. Labdha Shisha Punaraveksha Tadiyamangri Vanvamna Karunamani Shrayanam Didadhu. The Lord's beautiful face appeared to the Kumars like the inside of a blue lotus, and the Lord's smile appeared to be a blossoming jasmine flower. After seeing the face of the Lord, the sages were fully satisfied, and when they wanted to see him further, they looked upon the nails of his lotus feet, which resembled rubies. Thus they viewed the Lord's transcendental body again and again, and so they finally achieved meditation on the Lord's personal feature. Om Jnana Timirantasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Jina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Thapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakoda Mayham Tadati Shapadantikam Ande Hang Shri Guru Shri Jatapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Pitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savatutam Pradijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lolita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Prihe Mansha Kolpatarupyascha Kripa Sindho Pyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Yeah. The Srila Prabhupada doesn't comment upon this verse, but Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur does. He, let's see, gazing upon the face of the Lord, resembling a blue lotus bud, with even more beautiful lips and a smile like a jasmine flower. The Kumaras, having attained the mercy of the devotees, then looked at his lotus feet with ruby-like toenails, and again looked at his face. That appears to be the translation given. The scent of Tulsi purified their pranas, their life airs, and then the senses, since the senses are dependent on the pranas, the life airs. First, the eyes received the qualification for the sweetness of the Lord's form. Because of the unlimited variety of sweetness within each limb of the Lord, they desired to simultaneously experience all the sweetness, and thus disturbance spread throughout their bodies. In this way, they lost control because of the friction created by the bliss that is described in this verse. This is called anubhav, or symptoms of ecstasy. Their life airs and their senses were all purified by the scent of the tulsi. Then, with purified senses, they were drinking in the transcendental beauty of the Lord. Each limb was attractive to them. They were looking at his face, they were looking at his feet. They wanted to relish everything at once, and so they were feeling overwhelmed. They certainly, saw the Lord's face like the inner part of a blue lotus bud, without the rough outer covering, and relished its sweetness. Yes, and lotus buds are like that. They have a rough outer covering, and then you can get to the petals. His lips were even more beautiful. On his lips was a smile, which was most beautiful. They had been previously blessed by Brahma, their father, and their brother, Narada, for achieving bhakti. Now the fruits of that blessing were manifesting, labhashisha. So this is he'll come to this point again further, that how is it possible for them to come to this point? It was possible by the blessings of the Vaishnavas, Lord Brahma and Narad Muni. What was the beauty of the Lord's feet? Having experienced a little of the sweetness of the Lord's face and being unsatisfied, they looked again at his beautiful feet, which were the shelter of ruby nails. And again, looking at the underside of his feet, they again and again looked upon his face. Amarkosh dictionary says, Nirvarnanam tu nidhyanam darshana lokanakshanam. All these words mean looking. Sridhar Swami says that because they were unable to experience the beauty of all the Lord's limbs simultaneously, they began then to meditate on those limbs. Adidadhyu. Labhashisha and Pitranuvarnita Raha in verse 46 indicate that the Lord's mercy follows after the mercy of the devotees. And by the mercy of the Lord, one achieves bhakti. Because statements are made generally because of predominance of one factor, one can say that bhakti arises by the mercy of the Lord, though actually the devotees first give mercy. Thus one can say that by the mercy of the Lord, the Kumars achieved bhakti and experienced the sweetness of the Lord. what that technical language means, predominance of one factor, is that things are telescoped. Or summarized. The Kumars were able to see the Lord by the mercy of the Lord, but more precisely or more particularly, first they got the mercy of the devotees, then they got the mercy of the Lord. So of course, yes. So then we say, well, they got bhakti by the mercy of the Lord. But more particularly, one would say that they got bhakti by the mercy of the devotees. And then they were able to experience, as Vishwanath emphasizes in these verses, experience the sweetness of the Lord. Okay, there's something in the chat box. Kendra. In childhood, I sometimes wondered why our bodies are constructed as they are. Church gave me a vague notion that man was created in the image of God. But that's all it was, a vague notion. Hearing these verses makes me consider that the Lord's form is the absolute truth. And the Kumara's reaction to seeing him was that they wanted just to continue looking at him. So our own forms aren't arbitrarily constructed. We're emanations from Krishna, who is the all-attractive standard of all beauty. Thank you for those realizations, thoughts. That's, of course, a theme repeated throughout Srila Prabhupada's books, that the form of the Lord is not a projection onto the absolute truth, but the form is the absolute truth. There's no difference between the absolute truth and the form of the absolute truth, or between Krishna and his transcendental form. So the Lord's form is not only the origin of everything, but when we come to the Lord's form, it's, what's the word? Overwhelmingly all attractive. So his face is attractive, his toenails are attractive, his eyes are attractive, his nose is attractive. Everything about Krishna is perfectly attractive. And we get some small quotient of Krishna's attractiveness, but it's really messed up. Our forms are temporary, our forms are made of messy stuff. Our forms have so many mars and scars and imperfections and outright ugly features, however beautiful we think we are. But the Lord's transcendental form is the form of all perfection. Okay, anything else? Right. Om Samgatim Mrigayatam Yoga Margayar Jnanaspadam Bahumatam Nayanabhiramam Hamsnam Kapur Dashayanam Ananya Siddhar Avpattikai Samagranan Yutamashtapogai. This is the form of the Lord, which is meditated upon him, which is meditated upon by the followers of the yoga process. And it is pleasing to the yogis in meditation. It is not imaginary, but factual. as proved by great yogis. The Lord is full in 8 kinds of achievement. But for others, these achievements are not possible in full perfection. And Srila Prabhupada does have a purport to this verse, and it's quite a long purport. We'll see how far we go. The success of the yoga process is very nicely described here. It is specifically mentioned that the form of the Lord as four-handed Narayan is the object of meditation for the followers of Yoga Marg, the path of yoga. In the modern age, there are many so-called yogis who do not target their meditation on the four-handed Narayan form. Some of them try to meditate on something impersonal or void, but that is not approved by the great yogis who follow the standard method. The real yoga marg process is to control the senses, sit in a solitary and sanctified place, and meditate on the four-handed form of Narayan, decorated as described in this chapter, as he appeared before the 4 sages. This Narayan form is Krishna's expansion. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement, which is now spreading, is the real topmost process of yoga practice. We've seen the progress of yoga since the time this was written. My assessment is that in the 1960s, the early 70s even perhaps, yoga was seen as a spiritual path, although the teachings given mostly had to do with the body, and then, of course, with some impersonal philosophy to go along with that. Now it seems, with the progress of time, rarely do we see that there's any discussion, any substantial discussion regarding philosophy or anything metaphysical. The yoga comes to mean looking good, feeling good, and there's not much more expected. But still, yoga may be thought of as some spiritual path, at least by some. And here, Srila Prabhupada speaks to that perception. He acknowledges that yoga is an authorized path of spiritual progress. But he asserts that the real yoga process involves meditation on the personality of Godhead, or focuses on meditation on the personality of Godhead. And therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement, which focuses attention on the original form of that personality of Godhead, is the highest yoga system. And now we'll go further. It appears to me, I didn't check back, but I believe that this section may be a paste-in from something Srila Prabhupada had written earlier. Srila Prabhupada would sometimes do that. He would either direct insert here such and such, text, or he would insert it himself from something he'd written for Back to Godhead or for another publication. But it's been a while, and I don't recall the source for this. If someone recalls, feel free to chime in. And of course, I could be wrong entirely, and it could be this was originally written for this purport, but I sense is that it's not. Krishna consciousness is the highest yoga performance by trained devotional yogis. Despite all the allurement of yoga practice, the 8 kinds of yogic perfections are hardly achievable by the common man. Ashtabhogai is mentioned in the verse, the 8 siddhis or perfections in yoga. We recall that some decades ago, one meditational society began teaching an advanced course in yoga siddhis. And they seem to have shot themselves in the foot with that because it really didn't go over. The Anima Siddhi, as I recall, was especially, rather Laghima Siddhi was especially advertised that the practitioners of this meditation would be able to levitate. They'd be able to, yes, achieve that perfection. And the press didn't really buy it, and the public didn't really buy it. It seemed that it had more to do with some sort of muscular efforts by which one might push oneself off the ground briefly. But that's far different from the Laghima Siddhi. And so the Siddhis course flopped. These Ashtasiddhis are grand achievements and hardly achievable, Prabhupada says, by the common man. But here it is described that the Lord, who appeared before the 4 sages, is himself full of all 8 of those perfections. If we want to show a little Laghima Siddhi, we mostly have to fake it. There are those who have some little mystic power. We acknowledge that. But the Lord has all mystic powers to an unlimited degree. The highest yoga marg process is to concentrate the mind 24 hours a day on Krishna. This is called Krishna consciousness. The yoga system, as described in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, or as recommended in the Patanjali yoga process, is different from the nowadays practiced Hatha Yoga, as it is generally understood in the Western countries. Hatha Yoga, and these days we hear hot yoga, cold yoga, this yoga, that yoga. They don't adhere to the standard of yoga. They just offer something watered down. Real yoga practice is to control the senses, yoga indriya samyama. And after such control is established, to concentrate the mind on the Narayan form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Lord Krishna. Sri Krishna. Lord Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, and all the other Vishnu forms with 4 hands decorated with conch, lotus, club, and wheel are plenary expansions of Krishna. So here, one has to control the senses, one has to control the mind. And Kendra says he did a database search, and we don't find another instance of the wording from this purport. So could be that I'm misremembering. This may be the original first appearance of the text. So controlling the senses, controlling the mind, and fixing the mind on Narayan. And the original form of Narayan is Krishna. Practice concentration. In Bhagavad Gita, it is recommended that one meditate upon the form of the Lord. Practice concentration of the mind. One has to sit with the head and the back in a straight line, and one must practice in a secluded place, sanctified by a sacred atmosphere. The yogi should observe the rules and regulations of brahmacharya so to strictly live a life of self-restraint and celibacy. One cannot practice yoga in a congested city, living a life of extravagancy, including unrestricted sex indulgence and adultery of the tongue. Shusho deshe pratistapya stiram asanam atmanaha nat yutritam nati nicham chailajana kushotkaram tatrai kagram mana kritva yata chitandriya kriyaha vishasane yunjad yogamatma vishuddhiya. 6th chapter, the Ashtanga Yoga system is described. Yeah, Upavishyasane Yunjad Yogam Atma Vishuddhaye Samam Kaya Shiro Grivam Taryanachalam Sthidaha Samprekshanasi Kagram Swam Dishastrana Valokyan Prashantatma Vigata Bir Brahmachari Vrite Stitaha Manasamyamya Machchitto Yukta Sita Matparaha. The familiar methods of yoga are described: going to a sacred place, laying down deerskin and soft cloth and kusha grass, sitting in the appropriate asana with back and neck and head straight, with half-closed eyes, following the principles of brahmacharya. And then finally, not controlling the senses. Then manasamyamya machchitto yukta sita matpara, fixing one's mind on Krishna. Manasamyamya, completely controlling the mind. Machchitta, becoming Krishna conscious. Yukta sita matpara, making Krishna the ultimate goal of life. This is yoga, and it's a far cry from what we hear in much advertised yoga practice. I'm just going to continue a little more in the purport, and then I'll come back to the chat box. One cannot practice yoga in a congested city, living a life of extravagancy, including unrestricted sex indulgence and adultery of the tongue. I like that, adultery of the tongue. Tongue becomes unchaste by eating unrestrictedly. Yoga practice necessitates controlling the senses, and the beginning of sense control is to control the tongue. One who can control the tongue can also have control over the other senses. One cannot allow the tongue to take all kinds of forbidden food and drink, and at the same time advance in the practice of yoga. It is a very regrettable fact that many unauthorized so-called yogis come to the Western countries and exploit people's inclination towards yoga practice. Such unauthorized yogis even dare to say publicly that one can indulge in the habit of drinking and at the same time practice meditation. Then Saraswati says, the Lord has in full all 8 yogic perfections. So liberated souls also have these 8 perfections in varying degrees. We don't normally hear about the residents in the spiritual world exhibiting these yogic perfections. Well, let's think about that for a moment. We hear of even great sages having these yogic perfections, to say nothing of the residents of the spiritual world. One thing is that in the spiritual world, there's no need of exhibiting this or that perfection. The perfections seen in the spiritual world are perfections in service, which are greater than the perfections of mystic power. Generally, the mystic power is shown indicate that one has complete mastery over the senses and the mind, and so one is able to manipulate or manipulate how should we say this? One is able to master, not master the laws of nature, but become so well accomplished in dealing with material energy that one can do these wonderful things. And it's described in the 11th canto in some detail, the ways that one attains each of these perfections. But in the spiritual world, one doesn't have to deal with material energy at all. And the devotees are not interested in doing these things. They're the real opulence, higher. In fact, it's mentioned that these yoga cities are a distraction. If one becomes attracted to these 8 mystic perfections, then one may go to Siddhaloka, where these perfections are innate, where they're native. But the devotee wants to transcend the material world altogether. So he avoids fascination with the 8 mystic powers and becomes focused on the real purpose. Manasam yamya machchito yogas yukta sita matpadaha. The real goal is to become conscious of Krishna, to revive one's eternal relationship with Krishna. So if one becomes fascinated by these mystic powers, one is losing the thread. Srila Prabhupada points out that even the materialists can achieve a sort of analog of the mystic powers. One can become lighter than the lightest by mystic perfection. All right, they create airplanes. One can enter into stone. Okay, they create metros, subways, and so on. There's there's some interest in the parapsychological community in various kinds of mystic achievements. The one that comes to mind at the moment is what they call remote viewing, which has been of interest to the military in various countries, especially Russia and America. And there are methods, it seems, by which one can systematically cultivate the ability to see things at a distance without using one's direct sensory perception, or even to see the future. There's clairvoyance, by which one can perceive things. There's what's the word? The ability to tune into the minds of others and know what others are thinking. There's a name for that in parapsychology. It escapes me at the moment. So there's an interest among scientists or among sort of fringe researchers, those that fringe in quotes, those who are regarded as sort of on the fringes of science, who use scientific investigation, scientific methods to look into these things. But my point is that there a great interest arises. Oh, this is really interesting. How does this work? Could I develop such capabilities? Or could we train others to develop such capabilities? So in this way, they become distracted by really what's only a slight exhibition of mystic powers. And you can just imagine how extraordinary it would be to have the actual mystic cities to a highly developed extent, so that one actually could travel from planet to planet, or one could actually know with accuracy what others are thinking. One could actually control the minds of others. One could do so many things. So how attractive that is. And the genuine yogis who are practicing yoga and developing such perfections almost automatically are cautioned that if you become distracted by these things, then you're going to miss the real goal, which is to approach the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. So, yeah, those would be my thoughts about your question. 5,000. Oh, let's see. Gurudas says there's a fair number of devotees in our movement who argue teaching yoga in classes is a platform to preach. They claim to reach out to students who are spiritually inclined with a brief kirtan before each yoga session, but no philosophy or book distribution or even prasadam distribution. Some devotees have made this yoga teaching their main service. Is this indeed full preaching? Or what might devotees who are on this path have to be aware of? Well, it is a strategy. For some devotees, it's a way of earning a livelihood. And what can I say about that? I don't have any quarrels about how grahastas support themselves. But as a preaching strategy, all right, the idea is that people have some interest in yoga. So by teaching yoga, we can gradually bring them over to the devotional life. I don't have any invective to offer against doing this. It's not what I do, but others may adopt this strategy. And then we would have to see what kind of results there might be. I know that in Hong Kong, if I have it right, this has long been a strategy. The perception has been that people are unwilling or reluctant to take to other methods, and that starting with yoga offers people a method that they find acceptable, and then people can be brought along from there. From what I understand, practically, they have brought people in Hong Kong to devotional service by this method, or perhaps even many devotees joined by this method. So if someone comes to devotional service, it's hard to argue against the strategy. The answer would be, well, it works, people become devotees, and I have nothing to say against that. I did see in Taiwan that direct kirtan was effective. I landed there one day and there was an engagement in the afternoon, and Jayadvaita Swami, Krishna Maharaj's disciple, said, well, it's an engagement of teachers, school teachers. And let's see. Well, I went there and I sort of expected a rather reserved Chinese crowd. Teachers, after all. And Janava gave a talk about Krishna consciousness, and then there was kirtan, and everyone, all these, what would you say, straight-laced or reserved teachers got up and chanted and danced with Janava and her husband, Kendra. So that also seemed to work. So I think the same thing. I don't have an animus against using yoga if it works. My general observation is that it tends to attract people whose interest is really in physical self-improvement, with a little psychological self-improvement added. And since that's what they've come for, the hard part is the switcheroo. It's almost like bait and switch, come for A and we'll sell you B. But the hard part in any case, since you've attracted a group that has come explicitly for physical improvement. The hard part is now switching them over to a spiritual path, which is not what they were looking for. But if you can do that, good. Otherwise, it seems to me that the direct path is still works. It will attract those who are interested in something spiritual, something directly Krishna conscious, and then you don't have the hump to get over. You don't have the burden of somehow transferring people's interest from the physical to the spiritual, because you've already attracted people who have some spiritual interest to begin with. So, yeah, no, I'm not going to yoga bash, but yeah, I won't.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Thank you. Sadhu Sevas says, is it fair to say when yoga is being practiced in the temple room in the presence of Srila Prabhupada, that's a step too far? Might be unfair. I don't have if practicing in the temple room, and again, there are different kinds of temple rooms. I don't think we'd see this done in the temple room in Juhu, for example. But some temples have a different approach, especially in the West. And in one sense, well, now they're practicing in the temple room in the presence of Srila Prabhupada. Perhaps the practitioners are asking themselves, is this a step too far? Now there's this, it's in a temple, and there's a guru, and there are books, and is this what I wanted to get into? So again, I don't have an opinion. I don't want to sit here and say, well, if you've done A, you've gone too far. If you've done B, you've gone too far. Again, it's not what I do, not what attracts me, not what I'm interested in. But if some devotees find this is a successful tactic, I'm not going to attack them. But certainly, let's say I'd throw in my lot with the devotees who prefer just to chant Hare Krishna and give people Bhagavad Gita directly. There are people everywhere who are looking for exactly what it is that we do. They may not know about it, but when they find out about it, they think this sounds wonderful, or this sounds authentic, or this sounds like the way to go, or whatever reason. They don't need something in the middle. They're directly attracted to kirtan, philosophy, and prasadam. And Ananta Shesh says one size doesn't fit all. Yeah. Okay. "5,000 years ago, Lord Krishna recommended yoga practice to Arjuna, but Arjuna frankly expressed his inability to follow the stringent rules and regulations of the yoga system. One should be very practical in every field of activities and should not waste his valuable time in practicing useless gymnastic feats in the name of yoga." I don't know, that's a purport you might want to read out to your yoga crowd. Real yoga is to search out the four-handed supersoul within one's heart and see him perpetually in meditation. Such continued meditation is called samadhi, and the object of this meditation is the four-handed Narayan with bodily decorations as described in this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. If, however, one wants to meditate upon something void or impersonal, it will take a very long time before he achieves success in yoga practice. We cannot concentrate our mind on something void or impersonal. Real yoga is to fix the mind on the form of the Lord, the four-handed Narayan, who is sitting in everyone's heart. So again, the real goal of yoga. Some are simply attracted to the gymnastics, and others who may have some philosophical bent are attracted by some impersonal notion of a formless absolute. So the devotees are not interested in the gymnastics nor in the formless absolute. They're interested in Krishna, the personality of Godhead, as realized with his all-attractive features. We can stop here and we'll pick up again from this point in the purport. And I wonder who's leading kirtan tonight.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Pariprajaka Stotara Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Jaim Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu. And thank you, Krishna Kantiya.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Shraddha. Hare Krishna. And thank you to all.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Please share those class links with your friends. And we look forward to seeing you all again on Monday for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai,
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
jai,
His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj ki jai.
jai,
Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Gaur
jai.
Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.
Vivo. Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Gurudas Prabhu. Jai Madhupati.